will be recorded. Persons wishing to address the board on any agenda or non-agendized items need to fill out a speaker card and email them to, let me scroll down here if I can see, Velma, which is VELMA at sylvan.k12.ca.us. And Velma will then notify me and let me know if there is anybody that would like to address the board. At this time, we'd like to adopt tonight's agenda. So I'm looking for a motion by a board member to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Miyakawa and seconded by Mrs. Lindsay. Roll call, Velma?
Board Member Collins?
Aye.
Board Member Lindsay?
Aye.
Board Member Harvey?
Aye.
Board Vice President Miyakawa?
Aye.
Board President Roth?
Aye, that's a 5-0 vote. The agenda for today is adopted. We'll now move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd all like to rise, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance together. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we'll now move on to item 5, information and discussion. 5A is the superintendent's update. This is our first superintendent's update for this fiscal year. It's the 2021 reopening of schools. Eric, if you'd like to take over from this point and give us your update.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you all for your willingness to meet for a special board meeting. We're just hoping to have my first board meeting on the regular August 4th, but I could tell it was pretty clear as over the last 3 weeks, as we've headed into all this impact and changes regarding the reopening of school, that we really needed to meet. So first of all, thank you for your time in doing that. Our primary goal for this meeting, one, I want to give you an update. Again, over the last 3 weeks, a lot has happened. The other thing is the board hasn't had an opportunity to meet since some of the new funding has come in from the state, and it's pretty significant. So we wanted to make sure you guys were up to date on the funding. And then the other thing is, as we're putting together our plan, there are some essential things that we need to order and some contracts that need to be done. So again, thank you for that. Just kind of give you just a background a little bit on what's happened over the last 3 weeks. When on the 10th, on July 10th, I had a meeting with the superintendents, and we had the public health officer, Dr. V, presenting. And at that stage, everybody was all ready to go with students on campus, in-person learning. And when her presentation took place, it was pretty obvious things were changing very rapidly. She was very concerned about the spread in the community. And at that meeting, it was her directive that we were going to go to online learning or distance learning, as they refer to it. She gave us some guidelines. At that point, she said we could meet in small groups of kids. At that stage, we could even, with masks and social distancing, we could even do some instruction at that point. So we were visualizing how we could implement an online model and then also bring in some of the most needy students to do some some in-person work there. Well, by Friday, it changed even more. That's when the governor came on and he gave his mandates regarding districts that were on the watch list, and some real clear guidelines and mandates regarding that there is required that if you're on the watch list, that you would be able to do online learning only, and that you could not meet with students in small groups to do any kind of instruction at all. So, within 1 week's time, we went from preparing to do direct instruction with our students at school to just statewide mandates. And, just to give you a concept of what reason he made that order, 80% of the K-12 population are in the counties that are on these watch lists. And I believe there was another county that was even added the day of that announcement. So it probably even went above the 80%. So we have been very busy since that time. Fortunately, we started to kind of see a little writing on the wall, and I had met with the cabinet, and we started talking about, we better start thinking about some type of online learning program, because I see this thing changing, and I'm glad we did get started on that. So again, our key focus right now, there's two things. I've been meeting virtually a lot with our staff that are starting to come back, with our principals, our executive leadership team, and we've given a real clear mission right now. We're trying to be as concise as possible. That mission is, one, provide a safe environment for our staff to be able to deliver a model. That's our number one mission at this point. And then number two, implement an online learning model. So everything we talk about needs to be focused on those areas. And so our team has been very focused on that. I can't tell you how pleased I am with the work ethic and just the competency. They're such competent staff. I really appreciate their efforts. So with personnel, we've been working, I know Dee Dee has been working diligently with the labor groups, having constant conversations, sending out information to them, working on protocols for safety. And then probably one of our bigger challenges is that contact tracing effort, and keeping up with the definitions of these protocols. And again, I just came off of a meeting this morning with the superintendents and Dr. V again, and we were able to ask more clarification. I'll share that in a minute. The other thing is, with our staff, we went ahead and delayed them being able to come on campus from the 20th to the 27th. So today, they are allowed back on campus. Again, they're not on contract at this point, but they're allowed to be on campus, but there's strict protocols that the principals have shared with them to ensure social distancing, and each site's been working with that. We've also been currently, Dee Dee has been doing a great deal of this, working on developing an MOU with both SEA and with CSEA. Hopefully we're close to that. They've been very cooperative, and they're very understanding of that. So we're hoping we can get some signed MOUs here pretty quickly. And again, Dee Dee's been very busy with that. And then with childcare, that's the other option we've been looking at. Part of the call this morning was giving us some guidance about waivers. So in our discussions with SEA and with CSEA, the district's been offering for them to come back in person to work in their classrooms, looking at offering childcare for school-aged children. So there's been a lot of dialogue with that. We've talked about repurposing some of our paras to assist with that, but all of that is negotiable. And so we're in the process of that. And the call today gave us an update on there's a exemption waiver that you can file with your childcare to be able to provide those services for your staff all day while they're there working. So we're working on that. And now the online learning, Laura and her team and her coaches, and they have just, I'm just so impressed with the work they are doing. We came up with our model, and I think she shared that with you, our Sylvan Select model. And we feel like that's a ring that we can brand for our district. And, maybe even once this COVID thing is past us, if the regulations allow us, we could even continue to maybe make this one of our offerings. And so all the work we're doing won't be a waste of time. And again, Sylvan Select is our student e-learning experiences connected through technology. So I was pleased to come up with a name like that. And I think it really, we'll be sharing that with our families on Tuesday evening. And, you know, the key thing and most challenging part, I think, is compared to this in last spring, is there's so many strict guidelines about the number of minutes, the direct contact, the documenting all of those minutes, and giving grades and assessing students. So it looks very different than last spring. And that's going to be my, our task, our team's task tomorrow night, is to try to convey that to our parents. You know, I don't blame them for feeling skeptical. You know, I mean, after last spring, that wasn't the model that anybody really wanted to provide. So, but there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered. But some of the action items today, we feel are essential items that we need to do to be able to launch this effectively. And Laura will be giving you much more detail on each one of those. There'll be more things that we'll need to do, but we feel it, at least we've got to have this to start. I just want to make comments. You know, I'm new to the community, and one of the greatest things you can see in the community is a community that's willing to be involved and support. And we've already had some donations offered up. There's even more that are starting to reach out that want to help schools with providing devices. So, you know, it's nice to see people rising to the occasion. But what we have to be able to do right now is make sure we can get enough devices in the hands of all our students, because that's part of the requirement, is that every child is connected and has a device. But that gives you an update on what's been going on around here the last 2 weeks. Again, we're going to continue to seek more guidance, and we'll be getting more clarification each day. Any questions for me?
Right. Let's, oh, go ahead, Ms. Miyakawa.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So with school, just a couple clarifying, and you might not have an answer for this, and that's fine. I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. With school starting 2 weeks from today, do we have a tentative, I mean, as far as that MOU, we're going to, you know, I'm already starting to get some questions from parents. Do we, you know, we're having that meeting tomorrow. Do we have the ability to answer the questions they're going to pose without having the MOU signed yet?
What we can do is, I'll just share our best intent. And again, when we scheduled that 28th meeting with our families, we were guessing at what time should we schedule this that would give them enough lead time and yet not be so early that we couldn't provide every answer. So what we will do is anything that I don't have in writing and that I can't for sure, I'll say we're pursuing that. And I think I'll be giving a lot of responses like that in some cases. I think the key thing I want them to know is we have an idea of what you want. We're moving in that direction, and anything we can't provide a detailed answer with now, we will provide with you as soon as possible. So I think I'll be doing a lot of that.
Okay. Would that also include, I've had another parent question me about, teacher parent ask about the childcare option, and we've addressed it somewhat. Does that, I mean, I'm sure these are the conversations you're having. Does that look like when you said you're potentially bringing paras in, because these are school age kids that should be, you know, online doing their schoolwork? And so are we having learning centers set up in this childcare? I mean, when will we get some more information on that?
Okay, so for our employees, that's the intent. So we'll have a para in there helping them. We'll also have a certificated employee assigned. So because that was one of the concerns of our paras, is that they didn't want to be totally in charge of the learning, but
Right.
they would be there to support it. So we're working through that. Now, as far as childcare for non-school employees, we're looking at still having some childcare there. I'm working with the Boys and Girls Club. We're still in conversations. One thing you have to be careful is we can't provide direct instruction at the school site. That's the big warning. Be very careful that whatever you do, don't make it look like you're giving direct instruction to students at school. But the child care, they're exempt from the mandates. So that's the ground we're treading lightly on. It would be ideal if we had enough space to be able to provide childcare for our families as well. So I will let them know we are looking at that, and that is our desire.
Right. But even just for the teachers who have young kids, their kids should be in should be in that, learning from their own teachers. So,
Yes. And again, they'll have their own devices. We're not providing them their devices unless they're Sylvan students. And it's the responsibility of that district's to provide that child education, not us.
Okay.
We'll just be there to help facilitate.
Okay, could you also tell me as far as how, when this whole thing happened in March, obviously there's no warning, there's no time to prep, and our teachers did a phenomenal job of just, jumping to it and doing the best they could. Since that time, and then we have summer where they're off. So what kind of training has happened in terms of, being a little more capable and feeling comfortable teaching on a digital platform when we really haven't had a chance to, have trainings or,
Yeah, and I'll let Laura speak to that a little bit more, but we got to remember when we were shifting through the summer, it was going to be students back at school. And I think, again, one, teachers are off contract at that time, but two, I don't believe we were looking at doing a distance learning or an online learning. So that wasn't the focus. So it is scrambling to try to provide training for teachers. There is discussion with, and again, we're just in the start of this discussion with some of this mitigation money, loss of learning, that could we provide some type of stipends for teachers to participate in training outside of their hours. We know that they need more training. And I think Laura, again, could give more detail on what her team is looking at. But I believe it would be our recommendation to use some of these funds to provide additional training for our staff.
Okay, let's go to Mrs. Harvey.
Thank you so much. My question is about first responders. Sometimes communities have to provide daycare for the first responders in our community, and wondering if we are looking at that, or if we had to do that in March, April. I know Modesto City did, but I wasn't aware of any other schools.
They actually spoke to that today in our meeting, and that waiver ended on the 30th of June. That doesn't mean we couldn't look at that as a criteria when we start to look at providing childcare outside of providing for our staff, but it's no longer a provision.
John, what is the childcare number for staff?
We just sent out the survey. So Dee Dee, are you on there? Would you be able to respond to that?
Sure. Is your question the staffing ratio in the actual child, how many people want it? Is that what you're asking me?
I want to know how many children from our employees will be coming in to childcare that have not been there before.
That have not been there before. I don't have that data pulled down that way. Right now we have just over 100 responses, so 100 families, Sylvan families that are staff who are interested, and they have until Wednesday to let us know. So we're just monitoring the numbers, and Carrie Albert is actually pulling that data, and I'd be happy to send the board an update so we can tell you how many people. Some people are showing interest, but they haven't committed to wanting to do it. They want more information, but they want to also, make sure that they sort of get a spot. And when we haven't limited it in any way that way, we just opened the doors and said, if you're Sylvan staff, and this is something you need, and it's for school-age children, so ages 5 to 12. That
Right.
matches the current ages that we serve in our childcare program.
The reason I asked the question is that we've, like right now, we spent 15 minutes talking about it, and it sounds like a big, giant thing. And I'm looking for the incremental increase of what's different as a result of COVID, of us taking care of. I mean, if we're talking 5 or 10 students, that's a nothing burger. You know, are we dealing with 100 students? Okay, there's a big thing there. But, you know, I just want to focus our time and energy on things that they're all important, but where is the critical mass going to? Because we're already offering childcare, and to add 10 kids to childcare is a nothing. Adding 100 kids to childcare, that's a big thing. So that's why I wanted to know, what is our incremental increase by having staff coverage, if it's a big thing or a little thing? Because to me, it sounds like it's a big thing, but yet we don't know what the numbers are. And so I don't know.
So Eric, I don't know if you want. So I think one of the things is that traditionally our childcare program that's offered before and after school is utilized by some of our staff.
Mm-hmm.
It's predominantly utilized by our families who are maybe non-staff. So this is a different ask. So right now, as of Friday, we were estimating that there looked to be about 120 kids that are needing care, that are, you know, either certificated or classified staff members' children.
And that's over and above, because, you know, we'd already have childcare. So that's over and above what we'd had the previous year.
It's two different populations. And so I would have to pull out from that how many of those kids already participated in childcare who are staff's children, and how many of those are new. That number I do not have for you.
And
So
it's not apples to apples, George. This is during a school day when instruction's happening. So that's a totally different model than the before and after school model.
But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the incremental increase. That's the big thing. So in other words, where my question is coming from is that there is a standard childcare that is going to continue. So those kids would already be getting services. So I'm interested in knowing, what is the incremental increase of what we're doing over and above what we've never done before, which would include those who didn't have it during the day. So that would need to be where the additional COVID funds would need to be spent, is on that incremental increase. But if there's no incremental increase, or if it's marginal, then we should already have the funds intact to handle it, is where my question is coming from.
And I think, can I speak to that, Dee Dee?
Of course.
Yeah, a couple of things with that, especially trying to provide childcare for our staff. One, we want to make sure that, and we're still working on this through our MOU, that our staff come into the school sites to do their work. Some districts have moved away from that. They've given their staff options, and they didn't want to provide the childcare. So they moved away from that, and that was their choice. But at this point, our goal is to have our staff come into work so they can have better connectivity, better tools. The other is with our CSEA employees, again, this is all still part of our discussions. So this is why these things are so challenging, is how can we repurpose those employees? And so, you know, again, that's all negotiable still. We have to work through that. But I think to be able to answer your question, George, is that that would provide an opportunity for those employees. So the cost to us would not be, I mean, we could cover our costs by having existing employees do that work.
Okay. All right, Mrs. Lindsay, your hand went up. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, first of all, just to jump in on that last conversation, I agree with Jennifer. I think it's apples and oranges in a way. Our other program was an after-school daycare, pretty much, and this is going to be a during-school daycare, so it's a totally different approach, I think. Which I want to piggyback on is what I know that we're not required, but what about our preschool children, and what about daycare for teachers who have younger children than elementary? What have we addressed that? Have we thought about it or talked about it? I know that it's an issue that I have had brought up to me by a couple of teachers. So I wondered what was the consensus on that, Eric?
Yeah, and again, and we do care about that. That is important. We understand that's an impact. We just felt at this stage, making sure we provide for school-age children is going to be a major task for us as it is. If we can branch into the other, we could. But one, as far as licensing, that is also another impact. Right now, we're licensed for school-age children, and we can get an exemption to make it a full-day program. But if you're going in, we're not licensed for the other ages. Is that, Dee Dee, is that correct? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that's something that we really need to look at, because my understanding is that one of the goals was that, not goals, but one of the ideas is that we have younger staff, which lowers our salary to them, but it also encourages that they have young families. And so I'm concerned about those young teachers who have no place to put their little ones while we're requiring them to be in the classroom. My other question for you is, and it's kind of I don't know, you're talking about your MOUs. I understand that, things have to be negotiated, but being a delegate, I'm finding across the state that there are many districts many unions that are refusing, absolutely refusing to sign the MOU. And I want to know, what are our legal grounds as far as the government's concerned in making them abide by the requirements of the state and the federal government?
Well, I can just say on a positive note, and it's not because of me, because I haven't been here long enough, but the relationships that the staff has built with the labor unions here, they seem to be very cooperative right now, wanting to work. They understand the dynamics. And I know that Dee Dee's moving forward with that. Dee Dee, do you want to clarify further on that question?
I think, there are lots of things being said around the state in different places. And right now we've been actually meeting and talking and discussing really, all year, but since June, all through June and July, checking in, really great conversations, good. We've made a lot of progress, and I think we're, very close with that. So I don't, I'm always hopeful that doesn't happen. I don't anticipate that happening in where we are in the lay of our land. Everybody's working really well together. The other panelist members, including Mrs. Granger, has spent a lot of time with me on that, so that we can work out details that make sense to support students in this model and families, but also support our teachers and our other employees, and now switching focus over to our classified as well, to make sure that everybody's doing everything we can to support this community through this pandemic.
Okay.
All right, very, very good. Ms. Lindsay, thank you, but we called a meeting, I appreciate all this dialogue and it's great. We called a meeting for a specific reason. That was for the superintendent to tell us the COVID money coming in, and that we needed an emergency meeting for spending on that. So we've been going for about 30 minutes. I appreciate that, but we really need to get to the meat of this, why we're even here today, which is the COVID money coming in and the emergency decision for the COVID spending. So I think it's gonna draw a lot of questions, and we really need to get to the meat of this meeting.
I realize that, Mr. Robb, but I waited patiently to ask my question. So I would like to place the opportunity to ask.
Minutes, but if you want to keep going, Mrs. Lindsay, that's fine.
I just have one more question. It's a very, very simple one. Dee Dee, my understanding after we went into this this distance learning in the spring, I maybe I was under the misunderstanding, but I thought we were training our teachers at that time how to do what we are going to be facing, and I'm kind of taken back because I I was under the impression that we were ready to go and all prepared. So could you explain that to me? What happened?
Sure, I can initially talk about that. Mrs. Granger, Laura's going to have a lot more details about that. So we trained all during spring. There were modules and
Right.
resources and check-ins and all kinds of amazing things offered to our certificated staff as they switched to distance learning in the spring emergency closure. Lots of front loading, lots of support. Lots of great work. So that carries over and those modules are there. Mrs. Granger will have an opportunity to talk more about what we're doing now with that. And I think we have a really good plan to help people. We know that people feel nervous and some and are wondering about how to do this because, you know, they're hearing all of the same things that we're all talking about. We want it to be rigorous and we want it to be meaningful and impactful. And Mrs. Granger's made a great plan to do that. So she can speak to that better than I will be able to.
Thank you. I am not questioning it at all. I
didn't think so. No.
I was very proud of the fact that we had done that. And so I was a little taken back by the comment that we had a lot of work to do and that we hadn't done any training during the summer. So I was a little surprised. So I'm glad to know it carries over. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Eric, you want to go on to this new COVID money? I don't know how many of the board members know about it because I didn't see, did an email go out, Eric, on this $6.5 million or is this going to be the first that the fellow board members are going to hear this money?
This is going to be the first.
Okay,
And-
very good.
yeah.
Well, hold on, folks. You're going to get a lot of money. So let's go, Eric.
Okay.
Well, what about that video that you sent us to click onto? It told a lot about where the money was coming from.
Well,
Yeah,
that
but
and
we're
that
going to get to see how much.
yeah, and that's new money. The video that I sent to you was on the proposed new stimulus package. That's
Okay.
that's separate than this.
Totally different. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, this is all been enacted, and this is money we know is coming, and some of it has arrived. And I'll have Lizette give you that presentation.
Good afternoon. Well, I appreciate your introduction to that, Mr. Rob, because yes, hold on to your hats. We have indications of money coming our way fast and furious with, of course, a lot of language and things that we need to put in place. But I'm going to walk through this chart, which I tried to color code and help us break down all of our COVID one-time funds. So I want to stress that part of it. These are one-time funds, and overall, you know, the great purpose of this is to help us address our COVID needs. And so I'll start at the top. Actually, let me just walk you through what I have listed here is the name of the funds, because as you can see, there's a lot of them. The source of the funds, whether they're federal, state, and kind of how much is coming from those global pots of federal, state, to kind of give you an idea of then what our allocation is, which is the next column. And I'll go a lot more in detail about that. The distribution of these funds coming down from the state or the federal government, what basis they're using to allocate them out to districts, what some of the allowable uses are, just to give you a little snippet of some of that language. And I have some links there as well for you to look into further if you're interested. Timeline for use, which is going to be a big crucial one you see as we get into talking about when we need to spend these funds. Receipt of funds, which is another interesting topic, as you'll see a lot of them, most all of them are to be determined. So we're getting a lot of cash, we have to spend it, but we haven't heard when we're receiving it yet. Tax codes, that's for our accounting speak. And then additional considerations to just think about. So let me start with.
Lizette, are you sharing your screen or do you want the board members to pull up their attachment off the agenda? What's your preference?
There's no attachment on the agenda that I saw.
Yeah, there is. It is. I just looked at it.
I'm looking at it now. I don't see anything.
I'm not able to get it either.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm happy to share my screen.
Wait. Okay, then I went into outer limits earlier today.
No, I see it.
Look under 5B, under attachments under 5B, as in boy.
Yeah, it was tucked away. I see it now.
It's under attachments called COVID-19 one-time funds.
Okay, so everybody can see it. I don't need to share my screen.
If you want to
If you-
share your screen,
I
Mrs.
can't
Lindsay
see it.
might be able to see it. It will be hard for Mrs. Lindsay, even on her phone, to probably be able to see it, but go ahead and try to share it, Lizette. That might be easier for Mrs. Lindsay.
Okay, give me just a moment to kind of blow this up. And
And if you have trouble seeing it, it might be good to go back and look at that under information, that item. And you'll see that we get about 6.5 million, 5 million current, and then another 1.5 that we got a little more time to spend. But
Mr. Ross got it all down.
I've been studying, Lizette. I've been studying.
I'm sure you have, yeah. Okay, so I appreciate that. I've shared it now, you can all see, and I was referring to the different headers here at the top that give information on each of these types of funding. So each of these rows represent different funds. We'll start with the yellow here. The yellow at the top are the SB 117 COVID-19 response funds. These came from the state, and these were actually given to us in the 1920 year that just closed out. We received $137,911. And as you can see, if you look over to the right of receipt of funds, we have actually received those and spent pretty much all of those funds. We have about $1,600 left in there. And we used those funds to really stock us up and put us in a good place for securing a lot of PPE and disinfecting supplies and materials as we work through the initial closure, and really to set us up also to prepare for reopening. So we got masks, both reusable and disposable, shields, thermometers, sanitizer, gloves, those Clorox machines, and disinfecting supplies. So that was a bulk of what we used those top funds for, okay? The next ones in the purple are, and everything down is now new funding that we are anticipating here in this coming 2021 year and beyond. So this first one is called ESSER. You know, we love acronyms, so we have a new one, ESSER funds. These are federal funds that came from the CARES Act, and we're looking at a preliminary allocation. And I say preliminary because it's subject to change from CDE, but presently it's posted on the CDE website, and they have given us a preliminary amount of $1,270,364. And if you look to the right, timeline of use, which is a critical component here, we have from March, we could have started, so we could go back and backtrack if we needed to, but all the way through September 30th of 2022. So that one is the more generous timeline that we have in terms of spending those. And really there's a pretty broad discretion in terms of using the funds. I won't get too much into detail on that yet. But you know, all of these funds really are just meant to help support the achievement and the learning loss and all of that in relation to COVID and the impacts of COVID. Now, as we get into the other thing I wanted to mention about the purple is we've already applied for those funds as well. So we're done with that piece of it. And so we're just anticipating when we're actually going to receive those funds. That is the part that they have not told us, when we're actually getting the cash, which is extremely important, as you all know, as we have the cash flow concerns coming forward, which are starting to look like there's some hope to improve those, but at this point in time, we don't have that yet. So moving down into the green, all of these green money is what is referred to as learning loss mitigation funds. And I've broken them down because they're broken out into different types of funding. Some of it you can see coming from federal, some of it coming from state, and they're broken out as well because they're allocated based on different conditions. For example, the first one is allocated based on students with disabilities. The next one is also allocated on students with disabilities, except that's coming from a different pot of money that is coming from what's called the Corona Relief Fund, versus the top one is coming from the Government Emergency Education Relief, also known as GEAR. Again, more acronyms. So you just start to see some of the splitting and tracking for our purposes. If you look at those two lines there on the students with disabilities, first one is 520,000. And if you look to the right to the timeline, you see that one we have until September of 2022. Again, we have some time, they're generous. But if you look, everything from that point down, which are some sizable amounts, 1,671,000, 2,163,000, 509,000, and 625,000. If you look at the timeline for all of those, that is December 30th of 2020. Quite an incredibly short amount of time for a significant amount of money. If you look down at my little summary here, $4,969,154 is what we must spend by December 30th of 2020. The next amount of money at $1,790,850 we have until September of 2022. And then the other 137 was the very first line that we said we've already received and spent, all totaling out to $6,897,915. Now I just want to point out my notation on the learning loss mitigation. These are very preliminary amounts. They have not been posted to the CDE website. There's a process for applications, which we just submitted. And there's no indication again of when we would anticipate by on receiving these funds. All of these funds in the green are all also dependent on us adopting a plan, which is the learning continuity and attendance plan that must be brought forth to the board and approved by the board by September 30th of this year. And then, like I said, spent by December 30th for most of those funds. That LCAP plan, well, LCAP version 2, because it just happens to have the same initials as, you know, the original LCAP, so it's being referred to as the LCAP version 2, as a whole template plan that should be posted here shortly. There's actually still in the process of finalizing that draft. It's supposed to be out by August 1st. And like I said, brought forth to the board by September 30th. Okay, sorry, I'm going fast. I'm trying to cover everything here. The other part, I just did also a breakdown here in the very bottom, summary by funding source, just to kind of split out the federal versus the state. So you see the first line there, 4,343,000 are CRF federal funds spent by 12/30 of 2020. Then we have GEAR funds, 520,000 of GEAR funds, also federal funding, spent by September of 2022. The next one is the Prop 98 or state funds, 625,000 that we must spend by September 30th. So you see that first line and the third line, the CRF funds and the Prop 98 are what make up that 4,969,000 that must be spent by September of 2020. And all of those three together, 5,489,000 are what are referred to as a learning loss mitigation. That's everything in the green. And that all has to be tied to that LCAP plan that has to come before the board. And there's also, I believe, a community stakeholder input piece. I'm not as familiar with that. That's something that will be more with Laura and Marty. But and then the 1,270,000 is again the ESSER federal funds that we've already received preliminary allocation. And it's purple. I'm just tying it back to the purple here at the top, and then the yellow there at the very bottom. Again, all tying out to the $6,897,915 of total COVID funds. Okay, I know that's a whole lot of information, so I am happy to take any questions.
All right, so just kind of a quick summary so everyone can kind of keep it on a little Post-it note. We have essentially $5 million of COVID money to spend between March 1st and December 30th, which is a 10-month period of time. Then we have another $1.8 million that they're giving us an extra year to spend on that. But again, it's COVID money to be spent on COVID things. The district has come up with a laundry list of items, which is, I don't know what the total amount is, Eric, but it was under $1 million. And he's going to go over those. And then at that point in time, I'm going to go to each board member to have a comment or a question or a suggestion on either the current spending items or additional future ones that we're going to need to accomplish specifically before December 30th of 2020. But just keep in mind that we're working with $5 million of COVID money that we need to do an accounting work on before December 30th. So Eric, if you would like to go over that laundry list of initial spending items of what you want to spend that need to be taken care of before school starts, let's start with that. And then I'm going to go to each board member individually for comments and questions.
If I could just also add, Mr. Raw, that just that $5 million, you said an accounting of it, which as of this point in time means we actually have to have it spent, encumbered, committed for the period up through December 30th.
Correct.
And the language right now is anything you haven't spent, you have to do a report on what you spent. Anything you haven't spent, they would take back.
Correct.
That is the current language. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And it will be more clear, Lizette, in a moment when you get my question, because mine will be dealing with predominantly expenditures that happen from March 1st through June 30th. There were a significant amount of expenses the Sylvan School District did during that window that I'm going to be questioning to see if we can use these funds on. But let's go to Eric's and his laundry list. I don't know if you can share the screen. If not, if you can go down to this is going to be an action item. Are you able to share the screen on this one or not?
I'm going to have Laura take over on that.
Okay, perfect. So let's share the screen. If you don't, you can flip over to your agenda, and it's an attachment on the agenda of what they're looking to spend out of this initial $5 million.
Laura, would you like me to share the screen so you can talk through it a little?
Yes,
easier?
that would be great. Thank you, Lizette. I was just going to ask. Thank you so much. All right, good afternoon, board members. I'm happy to walk through the identified list of essential items that we believe are critical to the support and the launch and the successful implementation of Sylvan Select. We're very excited about the opportunity to engage with our families and really shape how distance learning looks from here on out versus what we had in the spring, which was really just crisis schooling. So in working through the 2 trailer bills that have guided pretty much the direction for all of the school districts as they plan for reopening in a distance learning platform, both trailer bills AB 77 and SB 98 have been very clear about some of the expectations in order to provide a robust and comprehensive learning platform. So for us, what we did is we said, okay, we have some pieces, and I know Dee Dee talked about the training we did in the spring. We have some pieces already in our portfolio, if you will, that will support a full 100% distance learning model, in this case, Sylvan Select. But there are some pieces that we want to add to that portfolio in order to support students, especially in terms of the 2 lenses of access and equity, ensuring that all of our students have access to the programs that we're offering and they're able to benefit from those. So with that being said, the first thing that I want to talk about on the list is that since March, and we've had conversations as a board, and I put it in Friday updates. In March, it was pretty clear that some of our students were unable to participate in the learning platform we had at the middle school through our one-to-one initiative without Wi-Fi in their home. So at that time, there was a donor who had reached out, and we've been working closely together to figure out how could he best support the needs in the Sylvan district. And he is very committed to ensuring that our students do have access. So in a previous Friday update, I described his generous support of the Sylvan district, not only through this proposed procurement of Wi-Fi hotspots in the amount of 100 hotspots over a 2-year contract period with T-Mobile. But he has also generously donated to purchase the remaining access points that we are planning to install at all 13 of our middle schools so that our parking lots will become hotspots, if you will, during the period of closure, so that with social distancing and appropriate safeguards, families can access Wi-Fi at all of our school parking lots. So the first item here is indeed those 100 Wi-Fi hotspots. The contract with T-Mobile will ensure that we will have a 2-year period of coverage with 100 Wi-Fi hotspots that would be checked out to students for a period of time. And the reason that this is listed here is that even though this is donor funded, we wanted to make the board aware of the amount and the contract that we would be entering into. This is somewhat related to item number 2, in that we have options when we get to item number 2, because the cost for a 24-month agreement is a different monthly fee versus a 12-month commitment. So in the 24-month agreement that our donor has committed to funding for over a 2-year period, the monthly cost per Wi-Fi device or per Wi-Fi hotspot is $15. So his commitment over the 24 months to the Sylvan District and the students is $36,408. When we go on to item number 2, we know from survey data that our survey to families, where we inquired as to what was the number of families that were unable to access what we put forward in the spring because of unlimited Wi-Fi. And there's some certain components to that, because some of the streaming and some of the requirements for live interaction require an access point in a home that will sustain that and be able to support that. So our initial survey with parents yielded 300 families that indicated they did not have the capacity to be able to engage in the learning platform due to issues related to Wi-Fi in their home. Now, we had a high response rate. We were very pleased that 87% of our Sylvan families responded to our survey, but that left about 700 families that we did not hear from. So it is possible that there are additional concerns and additional limitations around Wi-Fi coverage in our district, but we feel very comfortable saying that we know that we need to serve about 300 families with Wi-Fi in order to access the curriculum and the instruction and engage in that live interaction. 100 of those would be covered by the donor for a 2-year period. And then we have a decision to make, or you have a decision to make in terms of support of the 200 remaining Wi-Fi hotspots that we know of. An annual agreement for a 12-month commitment is $48,000, but we also have the option, just as our donor provided, to do a 24-month agreement for a little less money at $36,408. And do you want me to just go through these in entirety, Mr. Raw, and then we'll come back and circle back to questions?
Everyone just scroll down through them and just say what the item is and the cost of it. I don't give a lot of background on it unless a board member can ask for background during their questions.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
They're pretty descript, but just touch briefly on each one if you could.
All right. So item number 3, Google Enterprise. This is critical to the work that we do. Google is the platform. It's our learning management system, and it will be the platform through which we will meet with students virtually and hold our meetings. Our subscription, or the free subscription to Zoom that was offered to teachers, has expired or is getting ready to expire. So we are looking for a replacement. Because we are already a Google for Education or a Google District, it makes sense to expand our Google Enterprise for about the same cost as it would have cost us to have a subscription to Zoom. It's really pretty much within $1,000 of each other, but we get much more from the Google Enterprise. So again, expanding that platform to be able to utilize live interaction and a lot of other monitoring and security tools as well. Chromebook adapters, item number 4. This is related to the completion. I want to acknowledge Marty and her team's work on the completion of the district inventory. And in going through and inventorying devices and projectors, et cetera, we found that we had some shortages related to adapters for our HP and Dell, so that we are in need of about 100 adapters, and Marty is working with vendors to get best pricing on those. And we have several vendors that engage in a pretty competitive process with us, and so Marty's already working on those. 200 Item number 5, 200 Chromebooks. So in order to participate in Sylvan Select, we're looking at a model that would make us one-to-one across the district. And as you are fully aware, in the spring, through the work of the Technology Committee and Marty's work in assessing location of devices and accounting of those devices, we ended the school year one-to-one in grades 2 through 8. As we started to look at enrollment numbers and serving some of our other student populations, which is related to item number 6, we have found that we are about 200 devices short. And so we are looking to purchase 200 additional Chromebooks in order to support our Sylvan Select model. This is, I know this may come up, so I just want to acknowledge that this is in addition to the 400 we purchased in June with Title I funds. But again, we're trying to get one-to-one across all the district and in terms of all the student groups that we serve. Item number 6, some of our special education students that in our moderate severe classrooms, they utilize a specific curriculum. Its title is listed there and there's the description of that. These students, in order to engage with that curriculum, it requires that they have a touch screen to fully participate. So we're looking at an expenditure of $9,161 to secure 30 of the 95 that we need. We will still need an additional 65, but with all of the Chromebooks purchases across the globe, truly across the globe, there's a global shortage due to obvious reasons. Every school district, private or public, is trying to secure devices in order to be able to meet the needs of the students that they serve. So we know right now that there are 30 on hand with a vendor, and we would like to secure those. We know that we will still need 65 to fill this shortfall, but those 65 are not available. And working with the vendors that we have available to us, we're not able to find anything in a reasonable time frame that would allow us to get those 65, but we'd like to secure the 30 that we do know are on hand in an inventory. Item number 7, as we start to look at how do we make a more comprehensive platform to engage in a really, really authentic and valuable learning experience for our students, we know that there are some tools that teachers need, and Pear Deck is one of the tools that we identified as an essential. We can make use of a lot of free tools, and we have and we will continue. There are just a few that have paid versions. The board approved one of those in June, and that was Screencastify. That was a must-have, so we were planning in the event that we had to be remote. But some of these tools, like Pear Deck, are beneficial to us not only if kids are in the seats in our classroom, but also if we're engaging in a distance learning platform. Item number 8. So as we ask students to participate in Sylvan Select, supplies will be needed. We can't assume that every student has the pencils, the paper, the composition books, the highlighters, and the necessary tools. So we did a very competitive bidding process with vendors to look at stock and availability. We eliminated vendors that said the soonest they could get us things were late September or October. But we did come up with this pricing for $135,095, which provides to our students specific grade level kits of supplies that they would use to engage in Sylvan Select. Item number 9 is related to device insurance. As we're sending home devices, it's important that we try to mitigate the costs related to broken screens, failures, vandalism, loss, theft. This proved to be very beneficial to us in the spring with just the middle school devices that we sent home. So we're looking to have a purchase of device insurance for the devices, 7,900 devices, at about a cost of $14 each. Item number 10, as we're preparing for teachers to return to their classroom and be able to engage in the type of delivery of lessons within a digital platform, it's going to be important that they have the tools necessary in the classroom to do the recording and the displaying and the demonstration that they need, especially in terms of direct instruction. So we have Elmos in the classrooms, but there is a specific type of cable that will allow us to record directly from the Elmos. This was an important takeaway from the spring. We heard from a lot of teachers who were forced to be at home when they didn't have these kinds of equipment. And in fact, many teachers were seeking to buy a replacement of this on Amazon and so forth. But if we have the appropriate cables in the classroom, they can utilize the Elmos that are already there. At number 11, MobiMax is a supplemental curriculum. It specializes in targeted lessons in ELA, math, and ELD. There are some other content areas that are also represented in MobiMax. But it is self-paced. Students take a diagnostic test and then they engage in the lessons. So it is self-paced. It provides enrichment and extension for students at that level, but it also provides a remediation of skills for students performing far below grade level or even slightly below grade level. So this is another ed tech tool that we thought was well suited for some of the work that we're going to be asking all of our students to engage in from K-8. We are looking for a district-wide license, and we have some monies available to us in the low-performing student block grant that have an expenditure of $630.21. We've been using that block grant to pay for trainings around literacy in the past. And then we would be looking at the learning loss mitigation funds for K-3 because the low-performing student block grant is a specific targeted group of grades 4 through 8. And that summarizes the list of the most essential items for consideration for Sylvan Select and reopening schools.
All right, very good. So let me do my little Reader's Digest. We have up through December 30th to expend about $5 million worth of COVID funds from March 1st through December 30th. The district has presented to us this first round of approximately just under 500,000 of that 5 million. So I'm going to go to board members with questions. We'll start with Mrs. Lindsay, then to go to Mrs. Miyakawa, then to Mrs. Harvey, and then Mr. Collins, and then I'll finish it off. So if you have any questions on either the money coming in, the 5 million coming in the first round, or this first round of expenditures of $500,000, now's your time. Mrs. Lindsay?
Mr. Raw, I've lost you, so can I please be the last one while I try to get back on?
Sure. As soon as you come back on, I'll call on you. We'll skip down to Miss Miyakawa. The reason I'm calling, I can keep everything in order because you're all in a list on my screen. So let's go with Mrs. Miyakawa, and then once Mrs. Lindsay gets back up, then we'll go with her. Go ahead, Mrs. Miyakawa.
Mr. Ross, I could interrupt really quick. I'm sorry. I was just going to say, since you said that that would be coming from the 5 million, the majority of that will be coming from that 5 million that has to be spent by December 30th. But the things that go beyond December 30th, these annual subscriptions, the expenses from January forward would be coming out of the other pot, the 1.7 million that has to be spent by September of 2022. I want to make sure that the board is clear and has the correct information on that.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Elliott. That makes a big difference for me. I would be surprised, and I would counsel against us signing any agreements whatsoever beyond the end of the fiscal year, which would be June 30th of 2021, into entering into multiple year contracts other than from the donor's contract. I mean, for us to enter into agreements beyond June 30th, I don't think that's why.
They're not beyond June 30th, they're beyond December 30th. And so
yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, I take it all back. You're saying those funds that need to be accounted for beyond December 30th. Okay, you make complete sense. I just heard it wrong. I'm sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to make that distinction.
Miyakawa?
Just a clarifying question. So if I understood you correctly, this year every child will receive a Chromebook, every child will receive a student supply kit, and every child will receive insurance on that device, which is different from the past where some kids brought their own stuff, some kids determined whether they wanted insurance or not. But this year, because of extraordinary circumstances, every child will get all three of those things. Is that correct?
That is our goal. That is our intention. That is our goal. The one issue we have is the production of Chromebooks, but as production catches back up, then that would be something that we would be able to fulfill. But again, it's important for us to get in the queue. And those are the same talking points I used in June, and I'll repeat them. It's important for us to get in the queue so that we're not left too far behind as the competition continues to increase for districts that haven't had the opportunity to be one-to-one. For districts that have, it's a nothing for them. But for us and other districts that are competing for those Chromebooks when they come off the line, we want to be in the queue.
Okay. My other question, and I don't know, Mr. Ruff, you're going to address this later or in our meeting in August, but you know, this current money that we're receiving, the money that we're told is coming via that link that Mr. Frederickson sent us earlier. Does that, are we going to pursue the trans loans that we talked about before? Because we're supposed to get that process started in August or September. Is that something we'll discuss in our August meeting?
Okay, what kind of money you're saying? Trans loan?
It's
What?
called trans funding. It's that webinar that that Velma sent us the link to.
Yeah, but you know, the problem with that webinar, although I appreciate that we got it, it's a crystal ball. We don't know. I mean, none of that stuff has even cleared the House of Representatives. So, I mean, a lot of it's kind of like, I hear every other day who the new VP is going to be, and it changes on a daily basis. So I'm not discounting the video. I'm just saying that the video was a bit of a crystal ball, and
True.
until the Senate, the House, and the President sign, I really don't even think we should waste time talking about it.
Okay, but there's two videos. There's the video that he sent us a day or two ago. That's the crystal ball you're talking about. Then there was the webinar that we watched a week or so ago that talked about what do we do because of deferrals, 6 months of deferrals, we need cash. So that's trans funding, and we're supposed to start that process in August or September, and then we could decide we don't want to take the money because we get enough from the two different federal stimuluses. But are we going to have a conversation about starting that process in August?
And let's move that discussion to August with dealing with the whole deferral issue, because that's basically a cash funding accounting principle, and we're actually dealing with actual budgeted expenses and revenues versus cash flow, which are two different things. But yes, we will deal with that in August, the cash flow issue.
Okay, so I guess my only other question, and maybe you'll address this, is this is only what we have said like a week ago, $489,000 of what is it, 4 million that's supposed to be sent, so, or that we're supposed to spend. I don't, you know, we know that we're not supposed to spend one-time money on long-term costs. So I look forward to a discussion on, you know, what else we'll need in the future.
Good question, Mrs. Miyakawa. I think the principle is don't spend one-time money on ongoing expenses.
That's what I meant. Yes, thank you.
And all of these, other than a couple of them at the bottom, are one-time. I know, you know, some of the subscriptions, sometimes you get people addicted to them and then they feel they always have to have them. And so that could be a good discussion, but excellent questions. But yes, we'll deal with the deferral funding in August, absolutely. Mrs. Lindsay, are you able to see stuff now?
Yes, I am.
All right, go ahead. Any questions on either the potential $6.5 million coming in and the $500,000 worth of expenditures out of those funds that the staff is recommending?
Yes, I'd like to go to number 5. If we could pull number 5 up.
Sure.
For me. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Laura, you could probably answer this question for me. You alluded to the 400 Chromebooks that we paid for in June, and now you're saying that we are 100 devices short again, and then you're wanting 200 more. So are we looking at buying 800 Chromebooks or 700?
So I will speak to the conversation from June, and then I'll let Marty chime in because she has a very tight accounting of our devices. In June, the reason I picked 400 devices is that's the amount that equated to the Title I funds at that time that we had to expend. It's been a little bit of time, but at that time I indicated that that would not make us one-to-one. Even in June, when we had added the additional 400, we knew that that wouldn't make us one-to-one. We knew that we would still be short from being one-to-one across our district, including the preschool students that we serve, our pre-formals. But that money that we had for Title I matched the quantity of 400. I couldn't have bought 405 because I didn't have the money to do that. So that was some of the long-term planning we engaged in even at the start of the summer in anticipation of what may occur. But yes, we are ordering a significant number of devices in order to be one-to-one across the district, because our previous initiative allowed us to be one-to-one only 2nd grade through 8th grade. And then I'll let Marty jump in with any other comments around the 100 devices. And the reason that we want 200 is to have a little bit of overage because of the numbers fluctuating. So Marty, do you want to jump in here?
That is correct, Laura. So if we only were to buy, let's say we had 8,000 students, we had 8,000 devices, that gives us no leeway for those devices that would be in for repair. And those students need to continue to learning. So to continue to learn. So that's why we need the additional devices as well. We have done a very tight inventory of everything. And so we feel good about these numbers.
So you're saying we had approximately 400 kindergarten through 2nd grade that we needed to get devices for. And now we're looking at 300 more for covering broken ones or ones that we didn't know about, or is that what you're saying?
No. So we currently have 7,576 devices on hand, according to our inventory. We have on order, which we ordered back in March, and we're still waiting for those because, factories shut down. And like Laura was saying, there's a global need for devices across the nation, everywhere, actually across the world. So that would give us total devices of about 7,900. That still makes us short of over 100 devices. The other part that we also need to take into account are our pre-formal kiddos. And we have, let's see, I have my numbers right here. We have about 32 of those students because they also need to be provided with learning. So yeah, the 200 that we're looking at purchasing would provide us enough so that we believe we would be able to be one-to-one when they arrive. And we know they're not going to be here on the first day of school.
Okay. Now, my question for you is, and I don't understand this, maybe it's just California, but I remember when my kids were in school, if they lost a book, they had to pay for it. When did that law change that if kids lose, break, or whatever, a book or even the Chromebook, that they aren't responsible for it?
They still are responsible for it. So the insurance, what that does is that helps offset those costs. In the last few years, we have not had insurance our devices. We've allowed parents to purchase that cost, but only those devices. Last year, I was able to get out of 3,000 students, I was able to have 300 parents purchase devices, but that left quite a few uninsured.
I understand that. But my question to you is, why are they not mandated to either purchase it or let you know at the time that they can't afford it, so that we can cover those? Why should we cover all 8,000 Chromebooks when we have the, is it against the law for us to have them be responsible for the Chromebooks?
Lizette, do you want to address that in regards to our conversation?
Sure. So in terms of the law and the requirements, they're still required to cover damages. In terms of the insurance, what we've talked about is that typically the insurance program has been, parents can purchase this insurance program themselves.
I understand
That's not
that.
something we can require them to purchase. If they don't purchase it, then they have to cover the damages. Now there's, we do our due diligence in those efforts of recouping those funds, but there are limitations to that. The other discussion we had is that for this one time, and we had this discussion in cabinet, and so this one time this year is definitely an anomaly and a requirement with everyone to participate in distance learning and everyone to take devices home, which is not a requirement before. And so because this requirement is what families need to do, and we have this funding that can be applied towards that, And we also would help to minimize some of the contact that we would need to have with families in collecting these funds ourselves. We would be approaching this in a different way, in that we would be covering it with these COVID funds, which are meant to help mitigate these costs. And we would be making it clear to families that this would be something that we do this year in light of the circumstances. And going forward, then families in the future years would be required to go back to purchasing the insurance.
Okay, that was
like
my
before.
that was going to be my next question. Was
Mhm.
this is a one-time only thing, not
Absolutely.
a particular? Okay,
Correct.
okay. Then I guess what my other question, and this I guess I'm not sure who this would go to. I guess you. Can any of this money be used on? And I'm going to jump to Jen's, and I know that George said we'd talk about it in August, but I just need to know this for right now. Can any of this money be used to put into savings for deferred next year? For the 6 months that the governor says we are going to have, no money for our salaries?
So there's a couple different issues. One of them is just when we need to utilize these funds. And we have to actually spend the funds by December 30th. At least that 4.9 million has to actually get spent by then. If not, we give it back. The other part of it, and I mentioned in my chart,
But
it was
I'm saying that would be spending it. We are saying we are putting it in here. This is salary for them. That is saying it's spent.
Oh, you're saying on salaries?
Yes.
Well, part of that is also to be determined. We are awaiting guidance on a lot of those specifics. And as we get that guidance solidified, we will definitely be looking at those limitations and seeing what can be done around the guidance that we're given. Generally speaking, if it's being directed towards COVID relief, and maybe some repurposing, as Mr. Raw indicated, of what is the difference of what we're providing versus what we were providing before, say, for example, in the child care discussion. And that difference is something new that we wouldn't have been providing before. That is a legitimate connection to the pandemic and the reason that we are receiving these funds to help alleviate that impact to our budget. And the other part of it is cash that you were talking about. And that's a whole nother discussion that we'll also have in August in terms of just the cash impact, because we have not been given an exact timeline of when the cash will actually come in for this.
Okay, I guess my concern is that we don't get, I understand all this and I agree with all this and I'm not gonna go against it. All I'm saying is, let's don't just spend everything. Look for some place to spend this, because somewhere down the line, we may be able to use some of this money to put in the county and save for those 6 or so months of deferred salary. And I'm a little nervous that, that we've got like a cache of money and we're like, oh, where can we spend it? Where can we spend it? Where can we spend it? And I just don't want to spend it all before we have a chance to know if we can use it there. And I think that's.
And if I can respond to that again, that we had discussion about that in cabinet. There was also another list of things that we feel would be beneficial for students in our distance learning program. But we narrowed this down to essential things that we needed, so that we have that same attitude, that we just don't have this pot of money, that let's just go spend it all. So.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Lizette.
All right, Mrs. Harvey, any questions?
Yes, I just kind of had one about the software, MobiMax and Pear Deck. One, it's about the training that's going to go into it, and then are you going to track how often it gets used? Because sometimes, obviously, stuff gets purchased, and then if they don't feel comfortable with it, they don't use it. So if you can just share your information on that.
Yes, I'm happy to. So Pear Deck comes with some training modules. And of course, we have very, very sophisticated and qualified instructional coaches who are already quite familiar with the tool.
Great.
So ongoing training is bundled into that because that's something we can continue to support. We have teachers who have paid for individual personal subscriptions of Pear Deck in the previous years. So what we would be saying is this is a valuable tool for everyone and we'll support you on how to use it. In terms of the MobiMax subscription, yes, we have some usage rates and trackage rates. When we do large district-wide, and we don't do these a lot, but a lot of times when we have these district-wide licenses, there are dashboards from the administrative purview that I can access, our ed techs can access, so we can see usage rates and those kinds of things. You will see that the MobiMax subscription is really part of some of the independent classwork that kids could use during that time and work at their own pace. It also doesn't prevent kids after the school day ends or before the school day begins in terms of the instructional minutes to engage in some of that self-paced learning. The reason that this came forward, I just want to note this, is based on, you remember that we did 2 parent surveys. The first parent survey we did in early June asked parents what was the most successful about distance learning or crisis schooling in the spring and what needed some improvements. And one of the things that we heard from parents and teachers, I do want to mention that I heard from teachers as well, is there didn't seem to be some things that were, self-guided and independent enough. So this is another tool to kind of beef up that platform that we're offering in Sylvan Select, but it's not the only tool. We would still want district adopted curriculum to take first and center stage, and then this could be an augmentation.
That sounds really great. And then will there be encouragement for people to use this within their classroom?
Yes, there'll be encouragement to use this as appropriate, and it's going to depend on the grade level and the student need, right? It's going to be based on the student need.
Great. Well, these are really great. Thank you.
Yeah, the Pear Deck is really for teachers though. MobiMax is for kids. The Pear Deck is a teaching tool so that you can make some pretty snazzy recorded lessons for distance learning to engage students. So
well, these are really great. And I was really excited to see these, and I'm really excited. I'm sure your staff and team will come up with some amazing lessons using these.
Agree.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Harvey. Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Raw. So I'm pleased to see that we're spending a lot on technology. I'm wondering if we can spend some of this money on PPE equipment as well, something that we can have on hand or in storage that will last us a while. I'd really like to see that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Collins, did you say that again?
I'd like to see us PPE, personal protective equipment, the masks, sanitizer, things like that, anything that we know for a fact we are absolutely going to need to be using, probably for, solid for the next year and a half. I mean, even as students come back on campus, to be able to have, a lot in storage, I think would benefit us very well. And I'm certain that you already are thinking about that. Maybe just a matter of where to store it. Lizette, I have a quick question about what, about some of the subscriptions that you talked about. If we, sign up for something, is it that the service has to be, not only do we have to spend the money, but the service has to be completely received by December 30th? Like if we buy something that, a subscription that'll last until June 30th, does that count? Or does whatever we would spend from January 1st to June 30th, we have to use the different funding for it?
Generally speaking, that is the rule of thumb when they say it has to be expended by it's just for the service during that time frame. However, I know that's probably going to be a question that comes up to CDE, and so I'll be really interested to see when those FAQs get posted, because some of these things are kind of, you can't just have a 6-month subscription, or you can't, a lot of these are just required annual subscriptions. So we'll see. We'll definitely look at what the regulations allow and work within those.
Okay. Yeah, that lack of flexibility, I don't have a word for it other than just it's plain stupid. I mean,
Agree.
That's wild. So I if you're not looking into it already, I'd love to see us explore some additional digital curriculum. I think a lot of the technology things that are here are fantastic, but if there's actual digital curriculum that can be used, I know that we've explored a lot of that with the online components that with our existing curriculum. But if there's anything supplementary or something that we can get that we know will enhance student learning now, that would be great. Also, training would be fantastic, because even if we get to have students come back onto campus, which is everyone's goal, I think that we need to go in with the expectation that that's not going to be permanent, that there's going to be an up, down, close, reopen, for an unknown amount of time. So any kind of training that can happen for our staff now that we can use some of this funding for, I think would be fantastic. My absolute biggest question for this, though, I believe that I heard mentioned that some of this funding, or that this funding is intended to be used for purchases made between March and December 30th. And we've obviously already spent, March, April, May, June, those are all the previous fiscal year. Are we able to use any of this $5 million to basically pay back or to reimburse maybe general fund money that was spent on, 700 Chromebooks or other digital things that the purpose is the same? It's just that we were proactive in purchasing it before these funds became available. My fingers are crossed for the answer on this one.
Lizette, did you get that?
Yes, I did. And that is a great question. And that is definitely something that we can look more into and provide that information to the board in either a Friday update or at the subsequent board meeting, because we are in the process of closing out here very soon and bringing that forth to you. So I'll work with Lisa, and we'll have to take a look at, and with the whole team, and just see what types of things we could identify that we didn't already charge into there that would meet the test and the intent of these funds.
Lizette, there was a law that was passed that said that they would be reimbursing some or giving some money toward the updating of our systems to protect from spyware, and you were going to get back with us and let us know if the money we had spent already, would we qualify? That would be a part of what Dave is talking about, sort of, because we spent a lot of money getting ourselves so that we're protected and getting all our computers and everything up running.
I'm sorry, you said spyware, or what?
No, when we redid, we had to redo all our computer system due to the fact that everything was broken and not working, and we got hacked. And I talked to you about, you said there was some money that came in to help districts so that wouldn't happen to them. And since we had already had it, and we were actually one of the ones they used as an example that it could happen to, I asked you at that time, would we qualify for any of that money? And I haven't heard anything on that either. So could you check on that? Because I know there was money allocated to districts to prevent just exactly what happened to us.
Sure, I'm not aware of anything, but I can look into that some more and see if anybody.
You don't
has any
remember that
additional
conversation at all? We had that like in the spring about the funding that we got, or the schools, there was money provided.
I do not recall, but again, I can definitely look into that and see if I find anything more on that.
Okay, I would really agree with Mr. Collins. I really think we need to go back to March, and we need to see what we can recuperate from that March spendings that we've spent so far in getting ourselves where we are.
Okay, Mr. Collins, did you finish up?
So yeah, my last thing here is not entirely related to this, but I am at work and my lunch hour has expired.
Go ahead, we're gonna wrap up really quick here.
So just, yeah, I'd still like to be a part of this all, but yeah, as quickly as we could wrap things up, I know I would appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I appreciate all of you and all your good questions, and they're all excellent. I'm a kind of a simple guy. I like to sum it all up in a few things, and then I'll add just a moment. So Lizette, I think it's very important that number one, we confirm that we're actually going to get this money and that it's going to come our way before we spend a penny on any of these items. Even though we're going to vote and approve, please don't let a dollar flow out of this district unless you know you have a dollar flowing in for it. So that would be number one. Number two, we need to really follow up on what Mr. Collins and Mrs. Lindsay said, and this going back to this March 1st. This district spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in technology since March 1st, and I really think that we need to make sure that we do an accounting on that. And what I mean by accounting, an adjusting entry in your books and allow for these funds to be used for that. I am sure that the reason they put March 1st and yet they still haven't given us direction and we're at the end of July is they're intending on anything that we spent money on as a result of the close down of schools, meaning I know Marty had all these Chromebooks she wanted to buy. They had to do with getting it to 1-to-1 so that because we were dealing with COVID. So I think you're doing a great job on that, but let's see if we can get those accountings done. And then somebody, I don't know, I think it was Mrs. Harvey said it, and I think somebody else. I think it's really important we nail down these subscriptions, Mrs. Granger, and make sure that if we're not going to be funded for subscriptions post December 31st, that we don't buy subscriptions through June 30th, and then we have to come up with those monies out of our general fund to supplant because it won't cover it. Did I articulate that in a way that you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not going to spend money that we don't have COVID money coming in for, that all these things will actually come out of the money that the government's going to give us. This is good news. Eric, we got this money coming in and we're going to be expending. I want to tell my fellow board members, remember, our budget is in the toilet. And so if Mr. Collins is right and we can get reimbursed and offset those costs, that will help out our budget situation. But know that in August, we're going to need to start dealing with our budget that's a little bit out of whack. And that's a big ticket item. And so if Mr. Collins is right and he's saying his prayers every night and we can get reimbursed for a lot of those general fund dollars spent on COVID stuff prior to this, that will really help us out in that. And I'm hoping that takes place. So thank you all for participating in this. We do have an action item we need to deal with, and that's these expenditures. So I'm going to need a motion on it. I would hope that whoever makes the motion will also make the caveat is we agree to these items as long as this COVID money comes into our coffers. I hope, because I can't agree to spend money on these things unless I know for sure we got the money coming in. So is there a board member that wants to make a motion for these? Is that you, Mrs. Lindsay? You want to make a motion?
Yes, with just what you said. The
All right.
caveat with the money coming in.
That we actually have the money coming in to cover the cost. So we have a motion.
Not coming in, actually there.
Okay. Mrs. Lindsay has made a motion. Is there a board member that would like to second her motion? We don't have anybody that wants to second her motion?
Nobody
What,
wants
is
to
there a
buy
problem with her motion that you have a concern with?
Yeah, what's wrong?
I will second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. So, and a second by Mr. Collins, and looking for a roll call vote.
Board Member Lindsay,
Aye.
Board Member Collins,
Aye.
Board Member Harvey,
Aye.
Board Member Miyakawa,
Aye.
Board Member Roth,
Aye. That's a 5-0 vote. These expenditures have been approved with the caveat that we actually are going to get the money to expend them.
President Raw.
Yes.
Yes, just for clarification with that, is there a way that we can validate to the board through Lizette reaching out to the State Department to give the board confidence, because if we delay until the money arrives, we will not be ready for school to start. So I just want to make sure we don't go against what the board is desiring.
I think if you are able to provide us with some type of confirmation that we are going to get the money. I know Mrs. Lindsay said she wants to actually see it in our account. We know that it takes government a while to get it into the account. So I think hopefully, Mrs. Lindsay, I don't speak out of turn here, that we can be a little flexible as long as we have a confirmation and we're just not going onto a website and saying, oh, we get $1 million. This website says we get $1 million. Usually we can have some type of confirmation from some type of government entity that, yes, you are going to get this money, and it should arrive by September 18th. You should have that money in your account. I mean, there should be some agency that can confirm that we are going to get this COVID money.
Mr. Rod, then shouldn't we revote then? Because our vote was that we needed the money. So maybe we should revote to say,
could I just make
once
a
we have
comment?
confirmation.
Could I just make a comment, and then we probably don't need to revote?
Okay. Mrs.
I don't have a problem with that at all. Is that if that's the direction that everyone wants to be? But my one concern is that in watching some of the videos, we get a lot of information from senators well, last night was from West Virginia, telling us about getting all of this money that we're going to be getting. I would just like to know, Eric, what kind of confirmation do you get from the state to guarantee you that we're going to get the money? Do you get, I don't know what we get. I've never seen anything from the state telling us we're guaranteed this money.
Well, and a couple of things there, like just Lizette just mentioned, they send us, like with the last funds, they send us a confirmation and with a code for us to apply. So we just did that. The difference with these funds too, this was passed by the legislature. It is part of the budget trailer bill. So it's not like the discussions that are going on in DC right now, where they're going back and forth and proposing. This was actually voted on and approved in the trailer bill language. So it's pretty.
Okay, then I will assume that in my comment that having the money means with confirmation.
Yeah.
So that will be that's what I'm saying.
Well,
okay.
And I still think, just so we're clear, that we should probably revote, so we don't have to reconvene and they can spend the money.
They can't spend the money. I've already just said that.
The motion, Velma, what's the motion say? That we're going just a confirmation that we're going to get the money. That's what the motion says, right?
At first, it was said if we receive the money to spend.
Okay, so then, we'll revote just to have it say a confirmation that we're going to get the money.
I'll change it to that, and that'll be my motion.
All right, motion's going to be changed to a confirmation that we're going to get the money, not that we actually have received the money. All right, and we have a second by Mr. Collins. Roll call vote, please.
Board Member Lindsay.
Aye.
Board Member Collins.
Aye.
Board Member Harvey.
Aye.
Board Member Miyakawa.
Aye.
Board President Roth.
Aye, that's a 5-0 vote, and so the motion carries. That's the business for today. Eric, did you need to say anything else before we close down?
No, again, just appreciative of the board meeting during your day, and a special meeting. I appreciate the 5-0 vote on this. We feel really good about the direction we're going, and this will help us achieve that.
Right, and let me just give one other confirmation to my fellow board members how appreciative I am of Eric, and I don't want you to just get a big head and explode in your office today. So know that we gave the superintendent, under our old superintendent, the permission to deal with COVID and deal with these things under resolution. And so he had every authority to do everything that we did today on his own without consulting the board. He called me and said, you know what, we want board input on this. And I said, that's excellent. So we called a special meeting today to talk about this money coming in, dealing with COVID, and the money going out. So I wanted to share an appreciation of how thoughtful he was to reach out to me and say, you know what, let's bring all the board members in on this one. Let's not have it fall under the resolution, but let's talk about it as a board and make a decision as a board, how we want the money coming in and how we want the money going out. So thank you, Eric, for doing that. I think it's a great way to run a district, and we have very thoughtful board members, and I appreciate you all participating. But I wanted him to be recognized that he did that, and it was a great thing. So
Thank you, Eric.
Appreciate
yes,
it.
so
Yes.
thank you all for working so hard. Staff, thank you. We really appreciate you, and we'll look forward to the next steps in this process, and I wish you all the best. All
Thank you,
right,
George.
so good luck, and we'll go ahead and close the meeting.
Mhm.